Hi everyone, welcome back to Winging It. My name's Rebecca from Feather Stitch House. If you're here for the first time, you're very welcome, and if you're a regular, welcome back. Now we're in the first week in September, and that means a new colour prompt for this month, and through September we're going to be exploring complementary colours. Now these are colours that are opposite each other on the colour wheel, and I'll explain more about that in a moment. We're going to keep it really simple this week because we're exploring our couching stitches as well. If you haven't seen this month's stitch tutorial video, I'll link it in a card at the top of the screen so that you can go and watch that and practice before you start today's project. You're going to need just your background felt and a single thread. I'm going to use pearl cotton, but if you don't have that and just want to use normal embroidery thread, that's fine too. And I'm going to throw in some beads as well, just to add a little bit of sparkle. So gather all your bits and pieces and let's get stitching. So this week we're going to be looking at complementary colours, and what that simply means is colours that are opposite each other on the colour wheel. So here's our colour wheel. We've used it a few times as we've been working our way through Winging It, and we need to first think about our primary colours. So our primary colours are red, blue and yellow, and these are the colours that make all other colours. Now when we mix two of our primary colours, we get a secondary colour, and so when we mix red and yellow we get orange, when we mix blue and yellow we get green, and when we mix red and blue we get purple. And so suddenly we have 6 key colours on our colour wheel. Now a complementary colour is made up of the 2 remaining primary colours from the colour we're starting with. So let's start with red. We've got 2 remaining primary colours, blue and yellow. The colour that these 2 remaining primary colours make is green, and so red and green are complementary colours. If we do that again, but this time take blue, the 2 opposing primary colours are red and yellow, and when we mix those we get orange, so blue and orange are complementary colours. And then finally, if we take yellow, our 2 remaining primary colours are red and blue, and when we mix those we get purple, so purple and yellow are complementary colours. Now this works all the way around the colour wheel. These are our core complementary colours, but you could take a yellow green and go directly across to an indigo, a sort of blue purple, or you could take a turquoise and go directly across and get a red orange. And you can play with these ideas as you wish, but I'm going to focus on the pure primaries and their complementary colours in our videos this month. This week we're using blue and orange, and I have been thinking long and hard about what we could do with these 2 colours. Now my first idea was to do something quite graphic, and I thought about the blue being the colour of the sky and what we could set against that blue to use our orange. And the first idea that I came up with was the idea of a sun, and I thought we could couch down some objects to create a circle at the centre, and then we could use a variety of couching techniques to couch down some orange fibres or threads to create sun rays coming out. And I really like this idea. My problem with it was that we've done some similar things to this before, and I wanted something a little bit different this time. My next idea was to do some flowers, and I thought we could do a blue background and then maybe make some loops out of orange thread and couch them down at the ends, and then couch some stems and leaves as well. And we could play with some variegated threads with this one perhaps to create some more visual interest. But there's an artist on Instagram who I find really inspiring, and her name is Hanny Newton. She primarily works with couching, and she creates incredible designs by laying lines of couched material in different configurations. Her work is so beautiful, and she plays around with where she places her couching stitches and the arrangement of her couched fibres, and sometimes works them very closely together to get quite dense lines, and sometimes spaces them out, and it sort of naturally creates shading. It's almost like an optical illusion, and I thought this would be a really good way of practicing our most simple couching. So it's going to be quite a simple one today, but I thought if we had a blue background and used primarily orange thread over the surface, I thought we could play around with what couching can do in its simplest form. So this is the idea that I'm playing with today. So when I say simple, I really mean it. I'm going to work today with just a couple of threads. I've got this orange pearl cotton as my primary thread that I'm going to work on the surface, and I've got a blue pearl cotton, but I think I may not use that. I think I'm just going to use a single strand of blue embroidery thread, and so I've marked out my margins on this piece of blue felt, and I've drawn a circle as a guide for myself in the middle, and we're going to do something similar to what we do with our trees. We're going to let our stitching on the surface define the outline of the circle. So I'm not going to outline it, I'm going to let the lines form the shape as we work through our piece this week. So that's all I'm going to need, and I'll see how I feel at the end. I might want to add some beads just to add something quite visual as I'm going through, but I'll see how I feel at the end. So let's make a start. Here I've got my surface thread that I'm going to lay on the surface, and I've threaded up just a single strand of this embroidery cotton just to use as my couching thread, and I'm going to start in the middle because I think that will help me decide what I'm going to do as I go up and as I go down. I've just knotted the end of my surface thread, and I'm taking it through from the back to the front like that. I'm just going to take it back down on the other side of my circle, and I've pulled it fairly taut, but I can just pull that back through as I need to. So now I've got my couching thread. I'm bringing that up from the back just a little way further along. I don't want to get too close to that knot from the orange, and all I do is just stitch over the top of that thread to put a little holding stitch in place. So if couching is a new term for you and you don't really know what I'm doing, then I have got a monthly stitch guide video that's all about couching, and I'll link that in a card at the top of the screen. So if you're not sure what I keep talking about, there's a full video that explains the process in quite a lot of detail. I'm trying to get the spacing fairly even, but I'm not putting them too close together at this stage. I'm just creating a curve with that line of orange thread. So there's our first line in place, and I'm not going to finish off that thread. I'm just going to store my needle for a moment so that I can put in my next line of thread. So now I'm going to work back the other way, and I'm just going to bring my surface thread back up just a little tiny way down. Hope you can see that. And take it across and do the same. I'm going to leave a little bit more space. I want this side to be almost shaded, so the lines need to be slightly closer together. And I'm just pulling that through again. Then we can repeat the process. So get my couching thread back. What I'm trying to do here is have some parts of this second line that are close to the first line and some parts that are further away. And I'm hoping that that's going to create some interesting effects as I work my way along. I thought I'd use the bricking technique and place my stitches in between, and then I've just sort of lost the plot already. So I'm just going to unpick that, because I do want this to be as much about the couching thread as it is about the surface thread. Although we're not using lots of difficult embroidery stitches here, it is going to take some thought and a little bit of thinking ahead. Otherwise it will just form itself, and I want it to be far more deliberate. I'm going to open up some space now in between these two lines, so those two are very close together there, and I'm just going to create a bit of space between our two surface threads at this point. Just bringing it in closer again now. Okay, so now I can work back the other way again. I want to go a little bit further along my outline, take my thread all the way across to the other side and back through. Now, if you want to vary it a bit more, you could occasionally do a different couching stitch. So in our couching video, we looked at the effects of using different types of stitch. You could use some cross stitches, or you could do a blanket stitch one if you want more of your primary colour to feature, or more of the colour that you're using for couching. Or you could play around with using lots of different shades of your complementary colours if you want to. You could do different lines, you could fill the circle completely, or you could do loops. There's all manner of things that you can do, but we're just creating a piece of art this week using our technique of the month, our stitch of the month, which is couching. I think that the colours working against each other are going to create some quite interesting visuals, so we'll see how it looks as it progresses. So you get the idea what I'm doing. I'm going to add in a few more and I'll come back shortly and talk about the way it's looking, sort of assess it part way. So this is me sort of just over halfway. I'm really liking the effect, particularly where the lines are closely packed. I've left some quite big spaces here. I've got a bit of a plan for those. We'll come back and have a look, and I thought I could do with a third larger space. So I'm going to try, I was going to put one here, but I think it will look a bit like an eye right in the middle. So I didn't really want to do that. What I thought I would do is, rather than work up from here, I'd work down and see how this section fills itself in. So I just want to explain as well what I did at the bottom there. So I'm going to lay a line of thread along the outline just at the bottom. I don't want to do it all the way around because I want these thread ends to create that line, but I think just at the very top and the very bottom, because we're working sort of horizontally, I think I can get away with it. So I'm just following the line of my circle as I stitch along. A couple of tips I've picked up along the way: where you've got quite sharp curves, I've mostly used the bricking technique where you offset the next line of couching stitches, but where there's sharp curves, they do need a little bit more help to form the curve accurately. So I have put in a couple of extra stitches here and there, which has just changed that bricking effect a little bit. So now I'm working back from this side. This method of laying the thread across and then just pulling back what I need does seem to be working fairly well for me. So it is all about just steering the thread with your thumbnail as you stitch along it. So what I'm trying to do now is to manipulate that void so that it's further over to the left, and I'm going to do that by building up some layers that sort of push it over in that direction. So if I leave more space over to the right and then make the lines much closer together, hopefully you'll see what I mean as I lay these next couple of lines of thread. If I just show you what I mean, so originally our void was here, and by opening up the space just to the right of that, I've forced the centre of our void now to here. So I hope you can see what I mean by that. So we were here and now we're here. So we've just moved ever so slightly over to the left, and I'm just going to add a couple more lines just to keep that effect going. So I've just got some orange beads out of my stash and I've made a little bead mix, and I thought it might be nice to, in these voids here, I'm going to start by just adding a line just along the edge of the void, but I might actually want to fill it with beads. So let's start by just adding a line of them. I'm going to keep it random, partly because I want the different shades of orange, but also I did try it out and I couldn't decide which bead I liked the best, so I thought let's use them all. And you could do the technique where you string the beads on and then stitch them down, because that actually is couching. That's what we've been doing with our bead strings whenever we've used that technique. Okay, so that's it with just a line. Let's go back and add a few more. We can always take them back off if it's not working. Wondering if we need a section of blue beads, you know. Let's do a little cluster of blue over here and see what we think. Now, do I need another blue one or another orange one? I wonder. think I'm going to go orange because there's so much blue in the background. I think we need to make the orange sing. So here's our finished piece. If I bring it up, hopefully the camera will pick up. Hopefully it'll focus. There we go. So we've got our clusters of beads there, and you can see where the couching is holding that surface thread in place. I actually really like the effect of that. It's in some ways a very simple piece because we've only used the simplest of couching, but I think the visual effect is really quite striking. Hope you've enjoyed that. Do share your creations at #FSHWingingIt, and so we can see all of our complementary colours pieces together. You can also add #FSHWingingIt36. Don't feel that you've got to do blue and orange this week. You could use any one of the other combinations, so you could do a red and green piece or a purple and yellow piece. If you've enjoyed this piece and want to do another piece that uses beads, you can click on this link here, and I'll put a link up here to a video that's best for you. Please give us a like, and if you want to subscribe, click on our logo at the bottom here and it'll make it really easy for you. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a good week making your Winging It piece. Happy crafting, and I'll see you soon. Bye.